Yo, it's Gersonzero, and welcome to my top 20 PlayStation 1 games from my childhood. This is going to be a lengthy video, so I'm going to keep it brief. These are games, as the name of the video implies, are from my childhood. These are my personal favorite games. It's not based on critically acclaimed titles from worst to best. These are just games that I grew up with that I consider to be the best. So if you grew up with the PlayStation 1 like I did, I would love to know what your favorite PlayStation 1 games are. Doesn't have to be 20 like this list, but I would love to know what they are. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to share it, like the video, and most importantly, enjoy the video. Love you guys. Tales of Destiny 2 came out really late in the PlayStation's long life of greatness. I was in high school playing my Neo Geo Pocket Color, Dreamcast, and even the PlayStation 2. A lot of my friends moved on from the original PlayStation, and a lot of us were already waiting for the next generation of games like Devil May Cry, GTA 3, and Metal Gear Solid 2. The next generation of gaming was upon us, so why go back to the old dusty gray PlayStation? Well, luckily, you didn't have to if you had a PlayStation 2 because you can still play PS1 games on it, and Tales of Destiny 2 played beautifully. The moment I saw screenshots of this game on the unofficial PlayStation magazine, I knew I had to buy it day one. So September 10th, 2001, I went to Software Etc. on 86th Street and bought it. I never played a Tales game before this. I was always interested in playing the original Tales of Destiny, although this isn't a direct sequel to that game. Tales of Destiny 2 was really Tales of ETERNIA in Japan, and the real Tales of Destiny 2 didn't see a release until 2002 on the PlayStation 2, which was never seen in the US. I'll be the first to say the story is somewhat generic, but the amount of things to do in this game made it a perfect reminder why the PlayStation was so great. The beautiful 2D graphics, fast-paced real-time combat, a massive world with tons of towns, dungeons, along with optional ones, and the amount of summons that you can acquire was impressive. The combat had so much depth to it as well, from the leveling of skills to the awesome arts, which, by the way, you know how long it took me to figure out that the final boss's instant kill had to be countered with Reed's Mystic Art? I never even knew I had that move. Tales of Destiny 2 may not be as great as say Vesperia or Symphonia, but it's worth checking out even today. I never knew this game's official title was Dragon Ball Z: The Legend. I always called it Dragon Ball Z Legends. When released in 1996, Dragon Ball Z was unknown to many unless you were familiar with the Japanese release of the show. I didn't get my hands on it until 1999 when my brother and his friend brought home a bootleg copy of the game. At an age where Budokai didn't exist, this was as close to the show as you were going to get. A game that allowed us to recreate the massive battles of the show was something only a dream could accomplish. Dragon Ball Z: The Legend is a team-based battle game. You, along with a couple of AI-controlled party members, fight through a series of episodes that follow each of the show's saga in chronological order. The goal of each episode is to beat the living hell out of each villain. What made this game so awesome for me was seeing the signature moves like Big Bang Attack, Spirit Bomb, and Final Flash. Stacking up a chain of connects or high connects against Cell and seeing Gohan do a Kamehameha was so awesome. I was also shocked in knowing that I didn't have to emulate the show's battles. I could follow my own way of tearing through each saga. There are benefits to following the show, especially if you want to get the secret ending. The only thing you couldn't do was transform into Super Saiyans, which wasn't a standard until later on in Dragon Ball Z video game history. This game represents my years growing up with Dragon Ball Z, and although Budokai 3 is possibly a better game, it still didn't capture the high-speed combat of the show like this one did. I used to own a game called Rage Racer that my father bought us back in 1997. My brother and I weren't into the racing genre too much during that time. It had repetitive tracks, boring music, and I only liked the logo creation that can be used on the hood of each car. Why am I talking about Rage Racer? Because I traded that game with a friend of mine from school. His name was Charlie. I traded that crap for Duke Nukem Total Meltdown, which is a port of Duke Nukem 3D. If I play that game now, it definitely won't compete with any of the PC versions out now. But this was during a time where the only first-person shooters I have ever played in my life were Descent on the PC and another PC game called Fury 3. Playing the first level, Hollywood Holocaust, blew my mind. The level starts you on top of a building's rooftop, which quickly puts you in the streets, then primarily inside a movie theater. The relatable locations made it cool to me back in the day. The movie theater has a curtain that can be pulled back to reveal a naughty movie, a bathroom which can be used to pee, along with a register counter. I was always drawn to games that were open for their time, and as a kid with no money, I jumped on the chance to play them. The game was brutal and violent. Ripping through a bunch of pig cops with a chain gun or tossing a pipe bomb their way felt great. Let's not forget that you can give strippers a stack of cash and tell them to shake it, then unleash the Devastator on them. What's better than pirates? Just about anything, really. But ninjas in particular take a huge dump on them. I love ninjas, but I never played a game that puts you in the stealthy aspect of their role. We got games like Shinobi, Shadow Dancer, and Ninja Gaiden, but they were all action games. 1998 hits, and what do we get? Rikimaru piercing his blade through a guard's back from the shadows. You take control of two deadly ninjas, Rikimaru, the masked ninja who serves as his master personal guard, and Ayami, the young beauty with the same role. This is the first game that I can remember ever having you peek around corners and rewarded you for using stealth tactics rather than diving headfirst into a mission. Each mission has you sneaking through bushes, running on rooftops, and of course, brutally murdering anyone in your way. It was wise to always stealth kill your enemies because fighting them otherwise didn't guarantee your safety, unless you were using the large array of ninja tools available to you. This is another game that impressed me with its vast stages, towns, caves, bamboo-filled forests. Every stage was a fun place to kill in. Playing the game today proves that the music is truly something to remember. Hearing the boss theme and Stage 5's theme brings back so many memories of holding the pre-DualShock controller and unlocking all the ninja tools through cheat codes. Surprisingly, for someone who played the game for dozens of hours, I never legally got the game. I borrowed it permanently. Sorry, Jeffrey. This game did spawn a ton of sequels, including a couple found on the 360 and Wii, but they didn't click with me like the first entry in the series. My fighting game experience before the PlayStation was always 2D based. The King of Fighters, Street Fighter, Real Bout, Capcom vs. series. I loved fighters with fast-paced action that had a decent combo system in play. When 3D fighters started to hit arcades, I always found them to be good, but not as hype as the fast-paced 2D ones. Games like Virtua Fighter didn't bring together my group of friends to the living room and play for hours. That all changed when Bloody Roar came out on the PlayStation in 1997. A fighting game that not only had super smooth gameplay, but also a very sick combo system. What made this game especially different was the cast of characters that all possessed the ability to transform into a beast mid-fight. Transforming into beasts made this game feel a lot like Dragon Ball Z. It felt like turning into a Super Saiyan. Again, I don't remember many games in 1997, if any at all, that allowed you to do that. Each transformation was diverse. There was a lion, fox, tiger, gorilla, even a large bunny. The game was lightning fast. It rewarded players for playing fierce and in your face. Some of the characters were really memorable. Who can forget the amazing Long, who had the greatest Dragon Ball Z-like combo ever in a fighter, and Gato, the man who throws the hardest punch in video game history. The final boss. Ugh. Let's not get started on her, please. The worst competitive fighting game I have ever played in my life is also one of the most fun on the platform. Evil Zone is a cinematic fighting game that uses one attack button to do just about everything. Projectiles, grabs, combos, launchers, specials. The fighting game mechanics are very basic but flashy. With only 10 playable characters, the game includes a pretty entertaining story that is inspired by its anime roots. One of Evil Zone's best qualities is how each character interacts with each other. Characters react to attacks and even yell out names from their move lists as they unleash them. Even when certain characters are paired up against one another, the mid-battle chatter changes. The soundtrack really stands out to me. My favorite themes are of Setsuna and Galleys. Another game with a late release, even now the graphics still hold up. Maybe it can be considered an unbalanced and cheap fighter today, but dude, this was really fun to play back in 1999. As always, my brother was the reason why I played the game. He played the import a few months before its North American release and praised the character's moves, so when he borrowed the game permanently from our friend Jeffrey, again, sorry, I fell in love. During the time of Evil Zone's release, fighting games based on animes or inspired by them weren't this functional. Only later on in gaming did we get games that had flashy moves like Evil Zone, such as Budokai or the Naruto Ultimate Ninja games. I can't say how many hours I poured into the life-sucking toolset that is RPG Maker. During a time where RPGs were probably the hottest genre around, RPG Maker was released on the original PlayStation with an overwhelming amount of options. It's as the title implies, you create any RPG you want with the options given to you. And there's a lot of options given to you. Thus the name RPG Maker. I wish I still had my game saves which contained my 2 terrible games, but sadly my brother deleted them. I'm fully aware that the PC version has an even better version out, but my heart holds the original PlayStation version close to my gaming heart. The music selection, sound effects, animations, and even character models bring me back to a time where I would sink 12 hours a day to perfect my story-driven RPGs. The stories I created and dialogue were truly epic. Not even Metal Gear Solid 1 had more cutscenes than my games. The battle system is basically the same found in games like Dragon Quest or Earthbound. My brother bought this game thinking he could create the next Final Fantasy VII, but ended up passing the controller to me. Again, I wish I could show you footage of the RPGs I created. I still feel the pain of losing those games. Why do I have to have a brother? I wish I was a single child. Before GameFAQs and YouTube, we had strategy guides. Before games like Final Fantasy 13, we had games like Wild Arms, real RPGs with true difficulty, dungeon crawling, and puzzles within dungeons. Puzzles that will leave you scratching your head for an answer. Wild Arms is one of the first RPGs on the PlayStation. It had sprite-based 2D gameplay coupled with 3D rendered models and environments for its battle system. This is also the only RPG of its time to have a Western theme. You are in control of 3 heroes who start off in their own adventure, which are then joined together in order to stop a group of demons who seek out the resurrection of their leader. Now the story isn't the greatest, nor is it the main reason to play this wonderful RPG, but rather its gameplay. Each character has tools they use to get around the world. Whether it's the towns or dungeons, the tools are used everywhere to find secrets or advance in the story. Plenty of times did I find myself not playing the game for months just because I was stuck. I never found the battles to be too difficult, especially compared to the puzzles thrown your way. One other thing I found awesome was the ability to name all your spells. I used to give all the spells dirty names like Fire Dick or even Urinate. One last thing, my brother, my lovely brother, broke my original copy of this game by putting the disc in his tight ass pockets. So years later, I rebought the game and had the handy strategy guide next to me, and that's how I beat the game. This was a tough one for me. It was between Crash 1 or 2. Reason is because both games have a special place in my gaming history. I first played Crash Bandicoot on the interactive disc that came with the console, and shortly after we got the greatest hits version of the game. When we played it, we couldn't believe the graphics. It was almost like playing as a cartoon character in a 3D rendered game. The facial expressions Crash did while reacting to death, or even getting all the boxes in each stage, was hilarious. I chose Crash 1 as my pick in this countdown simply because I have so much memories with this game. The music, stages, graphics all bring me back to 1996. My most memorable stage in this game is Jungle Rollers. Everything about this stage just reminds me of the early PlayStation era, and even puts me back into my elementary school shoes. Other stages like the Great Gate and Upstream blew me away as well. The Great Wall has you climbing a huge gate that is so tall that it practically reaches the sky. Upstream has Crash avoiding a violent river by jumping on top of leaves and logs. The water really caused my jaw to drop when I first saw it. I used to make remixes of stage music in the worst possible pitch perfect style. The game gets extremely difficult later on, especially towards the end. Stages like Road to Nowhere were tough, unless you just ran across the rope like I did. This was the only entry in the series that has some truly hard as nail bonus stages, especially the ones belonging to that dickhead Dr. Nitrous Brio. I can talk about this game for longer than this, but I will end it here, and I highly recommend if you never played Crash Bandicoot before, try this entry out. When I saw a Squaresoft logo on the game, I knew it was going to be one hell of a game. During the PlayStation era, Squaresoft was on fire with games such as Final Fantasy, Brave Fencer Musashi, Vagrant Story, Till Bow No. 1, the list goes on. Parasite Eve has this spot, a modern RPG that takes place in New York City. Parasite Eve has you in control of Aya Bria, a female cop who is attending an opera at the start of the game's story, which quickly turns into an unnatural crime scene when everyone attending the audience bursts into flames. Everyone except Aya. The antagonist Eve is behind the massacre and even tells Aya that they have similar powers and that she will awaken soon. After that, you're thrown into a chase after Eve throughout some of New York's landmarks. Central Park and the Museum of Natural History are some of the places you visit. The game plays like Resident Evil, but with RPG elements like gaining experience after random battles, gaining new abilities which act like magic found in other RPGs, and equipping new armor. Aya has a ton of awesome supernatural abilities that are very useful in battle, especially against the boss fights. What's so cool about this game is how it handles combat. It takes a page from Chrono Trigger, where the environments you're running through are the battlefields. There's no shift or change in scenery like in other RPGs such as Final Fantasy. You maneuver Aya in real time, avoiding enemy attacks by not getting too close to them. You do use guns, of course. Gun customization is vast and essential if you want to survive some of the later boss fights. Parasite Eve also has one of my favorite battle themes ever. I remember getting this game on Christmas alongside Guilty Gear. I also remember how much of a pain in the ass fighting the Ultimate Being was. That escape scene had me rage almost as much as tackling the Chrysler Building. When my brother and I popped in the demo that contained Metal Gear Solid, we were mindfucked. We didn't just realize we were playing one of PlayStation's finest, but we were playing a game that forever changed how video game stories are told. The scope was pushing the PlayStation to the limit. The music was like listening to a summer blockbuster soundtrack, and the stealth was fun and unlike anything I've played before it. The game starts off epic. You are Solid Snake, a badass who was sent on a rescue mission coupled with orders to eliminate a threat inside the same facility. This mission quickly becomes one of the world's biggest threats in history. I knew Metal Gear Solid was going to be one hell of a ride when I got the game and saw it came with 2 discs. Back then, when games came with multiple discs, it was going to be packed with awesomeness. Sneaking past enemies is front and center. Sure, there's parts where you have to kill or even subdue enemies that come your way, but stealth is rewarded greatly. Getting caught by enemies is followed by wave and wave of soldiers that will shoot you on sight. Unless you are using cheat codes or are late in the game's story, you don't have much in your disposal to counter them. This game has the perfect mix of stealth and combat. Boss battles are brilliant, and these bosses are probably one of the best in gaming, only rivaled by sequels to the same franchise. This is the only game that rewards players for getting the bad ending. I'm sorry, but the bad ending is the way to go here. Reason? Because when completed, you are given the stealth suit. A suit, when equipped, makes you invisible to all enemies. This is possibly the best unlockable item in any video game, period. Only other way of unlocking it is through Game Shark, which we used whenever we lost our save file and didn't feel like completing the whole game again. This is a game with tons of replay value. You can acquire a camera and shoot pictures that, if taken at the right place, will reveal ghosts in the photos. You can also play a bunch of VR missions that will test your skills, as well as run into tons of Easter eggs that you more than likely missed on your first run. This is not a repetitive game at all. You're always thrown a curveball. And if you're up for it, go ahead and attempt getting the big boss rank when completing the game. You're gonna need to replay the game a lot to master it, but trust me, it's worth every replay. I remember getting Ghost in the Shell the same Christmas as Street Fighter EX, Tomb Raider 2, and another unnamed game. I was like, what the heck is this? Is it based on the motion picture? We definitely did not put that game into the console before the others we received. When I did decide to try it out, it quickly became one of my favorite games of all time. This is not based on the motion picture Ghost in the Shell, but rather it's a unique story crafted by the author of the famous manga. Ghost in the Shell is a third/first-person shooter, which puts you inside of Fujikoma, a highly mobile mini tank that is modeled after a spider, which is really cute but deadly. I say cute because these things talk, and I say deadly because these things shoot cannons and are also equipped with heavy machine guns. And I say modeled after spiders because they can cling to anything, especially walls. The game does a fantastic job in allowing you to climb just about anywhere, upside down a ceiling, the side of a wall or building, and you can also dash to speed things up. The mission-based structure of the game is simple. You get to the end of a mission and are expected to defeat a huge mechanized boss. Some missions have you on board a high-speed jet boat, others have you going from point A to point B, and there's even a mission that has you disarming bombs with a time limit. Shooting everyone in your way is going to be the most important reflex next to maneuvering your Fujikoma. This is practically a shooting gallery, a great one at that. It also has one of the best soundtracks on the PlayStation, which I still listen to even till this day. I would even say this game goes beyond this countdown and fits right into my personal top 10 games based on an anime. A lot of people consider Mega Man X1 to be the best Mega Man X game in the series. I personally consider X4 to be the best hands down. This feels like the movie version of a popular series. Mega Man X4 was my first Mega Man game. I never played any Mega Mans before this. I knew a lot of people who owned them, but I never got to play them myself. The animated intro of this game had my arm hair stand. The animation and presentation was amazing. The music had me bobbing my head. When I started a new game and stared at the option of selecting X or Zero as your main playable character, I didn't know who to pick. I said screw it, I'm picking X. I then was greeted with yet another animated cutscene. It was like an anime. The animation was nothing like others found on previous consoles such as the Sega CD or even the PC Engine. This was true animation like a motion picture. The opening stage was hype and still has me pumped when replaying it today. The stages available in this entry are still, in my opinion, some of the best in the series. X has such great weapon power-ups and the Nova Strike was fucking epic. Zero also has some sick abilities and combos which can be used to tear through enemies. Zero does give the game a slight higher difficulty in some parts, but I still find that playing as him removes some of X's restrictions, especially against boss fights. After completing the game with both X and Zero, I then made it my mission to play the other games in the series. Even after completing many of the Mega Man games and Mega Man X games as well, I just don't love them as much as X4. Why do I love this game so much that others can't match? This game represents a time in my life where gaming was at one of its peaks. 1997 was a great year, and this game brings all those memories back to me. It's not only a nostalgic trip to me, like I said, everything about the gameplay is solid as well. Zero and X playthroughs never get old. A friend of mine would come over quite often and we used to do speed runs to see who can beat the game faster. My favorite stage themes are Frost Walrus and Split Mushroom. Oh my god, play this game if you haven't. It's worth every second. Some will argue that there's better entries in this long-running series, but you can't argue that this was a time where Tekken was kicking tons of ass and had a ton of freaking awesome content. Tekken Force and Tekken Ball, come on, that was fucking awesome. Maybe this isn't the best in the series, but it's one of the best and definitely the best on the original PlayStation. I remember my dad buying this game for us in Toys R Us. Prior to him purchasing it, we would read the review over and over again on the GamePro magazine. When I say read the review, I really meant gawking at the screenshots. When he finally bought it for us, we went home, popped in the disc, and was amazed by the beautiful CGI intro. The intro is a perfect representation of the game's quality. The amount of playable characters ensures you'll find someone enjoyable to use. This was the first game in the series that had a time jump which gave us new characters to play as. Kazuya was no longer the game's protagonist. He wasn't even in the game. Instead, we got the awesome Jin Kazuma. The second entry's Jun Kazuma's son. Who's his dad, you ask? Kazuya. It was fun playing as everyone through the game's story mode just to see each ending. They were short but sweet indeed. The in-game graphics were nowhere near as blocky as the second games. The stages are so memorable, like King's Skyring stage, Brian's back alley stage, and of course, Jin's dojo. The music is my personal favorite in the series. Nina's theme, Jin's, Brian's, Yoshimitsu's as you can hear in the background, which by the way, had his best character design to date. Every weekend, all of my friends, including my brother, would gather in the room and play for hours. My Paul Phoenix was a straight up beast, and I still remain the king of Iron Fist with him. His Phoenix Smasher was known as the Paw Punch within our circle. Once you were hit, you were not getting back up, period. In fact, they hated him so much, I wasn't allowed to play as him. I love some of the other Tekken games, especially 5, but this was definitely one of my favorites as well. It seems as if no one remembers the awesome Bushido Blade. I was a Samurai Showdown player before touching this game, and after playing this I can truly say this is the ultimate weapon combat game. It's not combo based, there's no tornadoes coming out of sword swings, and there's no super finishers to end each match. It's just weapon on weapon. I say weapon because swords aren't the only options here. You can choose sledgehammers as one of the many weapons. No life bars, no time limit, no arenas to get ring outs. Just you and your opponent in a somewhat open world. Each attack can cause damage to your opponent's body, but mostly will end in an instant kill. Each character has the ability to choose their weapon before entering combat. Some are better wielding certain weapons than others. When battling, you can move freely in the stage selected, but what makes this different is that each stage connects to one another. You can freely run to a different area, which acts as a different stage. Stages are interconnected, making the stages one huge stage. You can choose to run away in battle. You can even fight dirty if your legs are taken down by throwing dirt in your opponent's face. I did not follow the code of honor in this game. I wanted to live. Fuck that. The music was amazing. I love the graphics so much as well. Some of the best on the console. Characters physically showed damage taken. The blood was just red squares coming out of the characters' bodies, but it was so cool to see it. The story mode was pretty good too, except that gun-wielding prick at the end. I never played the sequel, but from what I saw, it didn't look as good as this game. So if you haven't tried out Bushido Blade, definitely check to see if you could play it. I am a huge Ace Combat fan, and this game is the reason why. This game, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and Zero Divide were the games my dad brought home that night he came home with the PlayStation. Ace Combat 2 was the first 3D rendered game I ever played at home. I came from a background of PC Engine and Neo Geo CD. 2D was all I played. This was the first console I got to play with such graphics. I'm sure many people played games like Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, and others played games on the PC. I didn't. When I saw the graphics, I honestly thought that it looked realistic. I was shocked with what I was playing. A flight combat game. I never experienced this genre before. Shooting down bogeys with missiles or connecting my gunfire with their aircraft felt so vivid. It was so unreal to me. As I looked at the PlayStation controller and heard the awesome music playing in the background that night, I realized that gaming has changed. Gaming has changed into something bigger than 2D side-scrollers. The immersion bar has been set high, and I wasn't ready for what was to come during that generation. This game was the start of my love for the PlayStation. I saw the Namco logo on the game's cover and told myself to remember it because I knew that more awesome games were coming from this company. Ace Combat 2 was the first game in the series to be called Ace Combat, as the first game was called Air Combat. From what I heard, Air Combat played very differently. This was the entry that put the series on the map. The amount of aircrafts you can unlock in the game was immense for the time. The missions are fun and pretty varied. Some are escort missions and others are shoot down all bogeys. I can't say how many times I beat this game. I can honestly play through it today and not be bored. I still consider this to be my favorite in the franchise. So many memories when replaying this game, and it hasn't aged poorly either. The only tactical game I played before Final Fantasy Tactics was a game called Vasteel 2 and Neo Nectarus. Jumping into Final Fantasy Tactics was a strange jump. I didn't understand how to learn new skills or change character job classes. It wasn't until a friend of my brother's, thank you Randy by the way, we owe you big, came over with the strategy guide and broke down to us what job points were, charge time, and how essential it was to having subclasses. He also taught us how useful Accumulate was to leveling. The game started off with a huge learning curve since I wasn't experienced with the genre, but it ended up being one of the best entries in the Final Fantasy franchise. The level of customization was overwhelming at first, but we embraced it and hired a few mercenaries, then renamed them to people we knew in real life. I love so many things about this game that I can talk for hours. I must have beaten this game about 5 times at 100% completion. The story is amazing. So much history was written just for this game that it includes an encyclopedia that has tons of written information on nations and characters. And no, this encyclopedia isn't the only way to unravel its amazing story. It has a story that unfolds as you progress through the game. And guess what? It's not a half-assed story either. This is considered to be one of the best stories in the franchise, if not the best. The story is great, but the battles are where you'll be spending most of your playtime. You can level your characters and choose from a wide range of different job classes. Each class has a ton of skills to learn and master, and each have their own different playstyles. Summoners, mimes, black mages, geomancers, knights, all have different skill sets. The knight's skills are based on breaking your enemy's armor and weapons along with debuffing their stats. The geomancer uses the terrain to unleash elemental attacks and defensive skills. And dancers use a dancing technique to inflict status ailments on all enemies. And lancers, of course, use the classic jump skill to come down on enemies. So many options available to the player and so many nods to Final Fantasy fans. Cloud is playable. and Eris even shows up as well. This game was played between my brother, sister, and myself. My brother played for 2 hours, then I got to play for 2 hours, then my sister got another 2 hours. We timed it with an alarm clock. We all watched each other play because we couldn't get enough of it. Think of it as watching YouTube walkthroughs before YouTube existed. And yes, I roleplayed the shit out of my playthroughs. My sister can vouch for me. There was love, betrayal, revenge. One of my ninjas cheated an Algreus with the party chemist. It was epic. I told you that I got Ace Combat alongside this game, so what made you think this wouldn't be high on my list? Before I played this game, the previous Street Fighter I played was Street Fighter 2. So I skipped Alpha in the arcades and never got to play the home console version. When I experienced this game and saw the intro, oh man, the intro. I just noticed that intros really did make or break games for me back in the day. The music still gives me goosebumps till this day. Why did I pick this game over the superior Alpha 3? Although I did like Alpha 3, I felt like Alpha 2 had more focus to it, if that makes any sense. Alpha 2 had lesser characters, lesser modes, lesser graphics. I can't point out exactly what makes it superior to Alpha 3 technically, but what I can say is that Alpha 2 had my favorite stages, music, and I played it a lot more with my friends. I feel as if Alpha 3 wanted to be too many things. They wanted content over anything else. They threw every character possible in there, and even added RPG mechanics to it with the inclusion of World Tour mode. Which, by the way, my brother never allowed me to create my own build-up character. Characters felt out of place when adding people like Balrog, Vega, Fei Long. Was the timeline even a factor anymore? Anyway, Street Fighter Alpha 2 felt right to me. I love all the stages in this game. My favorite stages are Sakura's, Ken's, Dan's, the secret stages like the grass field where Ryu did the uppercut to Sagata in the Street Fighter 2 movie, and the waterfall stage. Rest in peace, Charlie. The fighting was so much fun. My friend Jarrett would come over and play for hours. During the time we were whipping his ass in the grass stage, he even came up with the excuse that the grass was getting in his way. Yes, the grass. So many stories to tell. This was also the first fighting game I played where I properly learned how to throw fireballs. My brother never wanted me to learn because he knew that if he taught me, his ass would be grass. Once he gave in and taught me, he regretted it. That's why even today I whip his ass in Street Fighter. The only time he was able to beat me in Street Fighter was either picking Shin Akuma in this entry or picking the build-up characters in Alpha 3. The Christmas of 1997, we got Tomb Raider 2, Ghost in the Shell, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, and Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII may be considered to many as the most overhyped RPG of all time, but I consider it to be one of the greatest, especially from my childhood. The first RPG I ever beat and the first RPG to suck me into its world was Final Fantasy VII. I remember like it was yesterday when we got the game for Christmas. We didn't even have a memory card at the time, and when we opened the game and saw it was 3 discs, we didn't understand why. Was the game 1,000 hours long? Was it going to be mostly cutscenes? We didn't know what to expect, so we played it and saw how visually captivating the intro was, and we were convinced that this was probably going to be the greatest game of all time. The moment we got a tour of Midgar and saw Cloud jump out of the train to then be thrown into a battle against Shinra's soldiers, it immediately resonated with us. We weren't RPG gamers at the time of playing this section, We just read on EGM and GameFan that this was an important game for the PlayStation and that the game was the first of its kind. We didn't know why, but we were willing to find out. That night I got as far as fighting Reno from the Turks for the first time. And again, no memory card. I even remember telling my brother, I think I'm almost done with the game. Look how far I am. Simply because of how the game's story was escalating. Shinra was the only enemy in the eyes of Avalanche, so the naive little me didn't expect what was coming later. During the Reno battle, I lost. I didn't know how to counter his pyramid shields. I sucked hard. All I did was use attack and waited for limit breaks to charge up. Little did I know that item management and buffs were important to surviving boss battles. I didn't even understand the materia system like an idiot. When I died and saw that there were no continues, I was like, wait a minute. Why can't I start from where I left off? I played for hours. We told our dad immediately to get us a memory card. It was required. Before this game, we beat Crash Bandicoot with passwords, Ace Combat in one run, and had a lot of fighting games like Street Fighter EX and Alpha. This genre needed a memory card. When we got the memory card and got into the Shinra building, we were in love with the game. Yes, we had an emotional attachment to a video game. The choices available to us felt like we were in the world. When we were asked to either charge through the front door or take the back staircase, it was a big deal to us. Those little options made a huge difference. We took the stairs and we were shocked with how many flights we had to go up manually. It was really us, the player, running up the stairs flight after flight. You can even see Tifa and Barrett taking breaks, saying that they were running out of breath. That was fucking amazing to me. We got to Shinra after a couple of hours of being in the building, and guess what? He was killed already. Something bigger than Shinra was in front of our heroes. This is when me and my brother said, wow, this is why it's 3 CDs. This is the longest game ever. That's when the game introduced to us the world map, new party members, chocobo riding, visiting many towns, dungeons, and facing against the most renowned enemy in RPG history. I can speak for hours and hours about this amazing game and how it still stands strong even today. The test of time has been kind to this wonderful game. We played this game for years, multiple playthroughs and mastering it, defeating all the optional bosses, the weapons. This game opened the door to a genre which I feel isn't the same anymore. But during this time, it was a joy to play. Now it's all anime based, and that's a turn off to me personally. Not that I hate animes, but the genre has become something I'm not too much of a big fan of anymore. This is my favorite RPG on the PlayStation, and I'm sorry, but when this game gets re-released as a port on the PlayStation 4, they got my money. Maybe Square will finally see the demand of a remake through the sales of this re-release. If not, then I will forever keep this game close to my heart forever. Maybe my son will experience it during his lifetime. If he does, and I'm old, I will talk to him about my experience with the original, and maybe if I'm lucky, maybe he can tell me his experience with the remake. Okay, I know that Final Fantasy VII sounded like it should have been my #1 pick, but as you can tell by now, this list is driven by my personal nostalgia with the PlayStation. This demo disc introduced me to the world of PlayStation. This disc is the reason why I became so interested in trying out so many different genres. I wanted to play Crash Bandicoot, Jet Moto, 2 Extreme, and much more. I think of the PlayStation and the first thing that pops into my head is this experience. Normally my dad would be the one to choose what games we got. He would pick them randomly on the Neo Geo and PC Engine. This disc changed that by allowing me the opportunity to know what games I might like. I remember playing the demo disc for hours the night we got the PlayStation. Sure, we had Zero Divide, Alpha 2, and Ace Combat 2, but this disc was played far more than the real games we had. My dad asks us that night what games we wanted after the initial batch that we received, and we immediately said Crash Bandicoot and Tekken. This disc represented PlayStation in its earliest form and also acts like a time machine to me. I look at the selection of demos in the main menu and I begin to think of not just the demos, but rather my entire gaming history with the PlayStation. I discovered what it was to have a new console that was mainstream. I always had niche consoles. None of my friends knew the games I grew up with. I had a Neo Geo, a PC Engine, Dual R, TurboGrafx-16. My dad always brought home issues of Game Fan and EGM, but it never connected with me until my dad bought us the PlayStation. I now had a reason to get excited when I flipped through the pages because I had the latest, hottest console. This demo was the very first experience I had with the PlayStation. It gave me a taste of almost everything. Sure, all the entries on this list are games that easily top this as a game, but since this is a list solely based on my childhood, I thought it deserved to be on the #1 spot. Well, there you have it, guys. My top 20 PlayStation 1 games from my childhood. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from my #1 pick, but again, it's my list, solely based on nostalgia, and I'm sure some of you out there grew up with the PlayStation 1, and if you did, I would love to know, even though it's a little extreme, I would love to know in the comment section what your top 20 games of all time are. It doesn't have to be the best, but rather your favorite games. Guys, my name is Zero X Shinobi. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share the video if you feel that it's worthy of being shared. Later, guys.